afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Citizens Assembly Hub. We are Extinction Rebellion's Citizens Assembly Working Group, and we talk about citizens' assemblies a lot. So if you want to know more about citizens' assemblies, come and talk to us. But now we're doing something a little bit different. We have amazing guest speakers and an amazing event, which we had nothing to do with organizing. We're just very privileged to be hosting them. So this is organized by Make Votes Matter, and they'll be talking about proportional representation. So we're absolutely delighted and super honored to have them here at our gazebo. So I'll pass over to them now. Here comes proportional representation by Make Votes Matter.
Thank you very much for that kind intro. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, great. Hi, I'm Kleina Jordan. I'm from Make Votes Matter. Various colleagues here and lots of other friends and allies. So very, very excited to be here. We're here today to make the connection between real democracy and faster, better action on the climate and ecological crises. And at Make Votes Matter, we see PR as the keystone that enables us to put the other building blocks of democracy into place. And one of those for us is about having more deliberative democracy. So internally at Make Votes Matter, we practice that a lot. We basically have a decision-making agreement that we all agreed about how we all listen to each other and make decisions in different circumstances. So internally, we're actually kind of practicing better democracy than we're even advocating for. So I want to introduce the various speakers who are going to be coming up, and then we'll hear from them one by one, and then we're going to have a conversation between yourselves and the speakers, and you can ask questions, make comments as usual. I just want to say one last thing before I start with the speakers. It's very exciting to be here, and I'm quite nervous because the main reason that I work on Make Votes Matter is because I believe that we can't take fast enough action on the climate crisis. And I've been an environmental activist all of my life. A lot of that's inspired by my mum, Anne, here, who's needing to sit down after lots of XR activism today. So, yeah, woo! Very excited to be here. So we're going to start off with the wonderful Zach Polanski, who is the deputy leader of the Green Party, and he's also a member of the London Assembly. So with no further ado, Zach, would you like to come up?
Thank you, and thank you very much to Kleina and all of Make Votes Matter for everything that they do. Sorry, I just realised you're stood next to me, so I'll slow down my normal talking pace. So I've given speeches today and heard lots of speeches. I've been on the radio, I was on LBC this morning and Radio 4 yesterday. I've talked about climate breakdown, about the loss of ecology and about nature, and all of these are vital subjects. Yet this speech right now feels the most important speech this weekend. And if someone has not yet clued in or plugged into democracy, they might think, how can anything be bigger than climate breakdown or ecological failure? But actually, if you do not have a system in which the people who represent you are not held by vested interests or are not listening to the people who have elected them, then it's very difficult to get anything sustainably done. So, thank you. So a question that is asked often of me is, what is the single biggest thing an individual can do to tackle the climate crisis? Now, all of you, because you're at Extinction Rebellion, will know the answer is not to recycle or not to use water bottles or to go vegan. All of these things are helpful, but they are not the vital thing. The vital thing we need is system change. We need governments and businesses to do these things. So that's the number one thing we need, is system change. The number two thing, if you'll forgive me for 20 seconds for being party political, is to vote. Now, I would obviously say vote Green. You'd expect me to say that as deputy leader. But being completely non-partisan, voting is the really important thing to do. Voting whenever you can. There are local elections coming up in 2 weeks, almost everywhere in England, but London. Please, if you live in those places, make sure you vote. Do check out your local Green Party candidate, but also other candidates too are available. But voting is a really important part of the democratic process. However, we also know that we have a broken system of first past the post, or rather the system is not working. Now, I would argue that the Green Party have worked out, even under that system, how to still win, and we are doing that. But it is still fundamentally unfair to any party that is not one of the big parties, or one of the two big parties. There is lots of evidence that we have a Conservative government who frankly do not care about climate change. There was a short period during COP26 where they were at least pretending to care. But as they're talking about opening up new oil and gas fields, as they're talking about building new roads, we know that is not genuine. And so we look to another party to oppose. And at the moment, it does not feel like the Labour Party are in opposition. But I'm not here today to talk about politics, I'm here to talk about political systems. So the final thing, the number one thing you can do to help is Make Votes Matter on the 23rd of May are having a lobby in Parliament, 24th of May. It's also important to get numbers right. I said 24th of May because I can say it 3 times now and no one will forget it's the 24th of May. So thanks for the 24th of May. It's really important. I know as an elected politician, there is nothing more powerful than a constituent or a local person looking you in the eye and telling you what they want or why they think they're not getting what they're entitled to. And I don't mean entitled in some kind of horrible privileged way. I'm talking about the entitlement of every single person in this country to have a vote that matches equally, a vote that is fair, and a vote that is powerful. So please, if you can, do turn up at the lobby, talk to your local MP. If you have an MP where you think they would never back proportional representation or they would never meet me, turn up anyway. It's really good for the morale of everybody that the person with them is there and there's a big crowd and the MPs will see that lots of people care about this lobby. And more than anything, when we do eventually win proportional representation, when the history books are written and we know there is system change in this country, you will know you did your part. You were part of that movement. So make sure you stay involved with Make Votes Matter. Looking forward to the conversation. Thank you very much for being here and let's unite to survive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Zach. That's fantastic. Thanks for doing the big shout out for the lobby, 24th of May. Right, I just want to say, before I introduce our next wonderful speaker, Make Votes Matter is fully cross-party, so we're the place where anyone from any party or no party can come to push for a fair democratic system where every vote counts equally. I'm now going to introduce Francis Foley from Compass. A key part of their strategy is that some of the parties need to work together to bring about this change, and so that's slightly less entirely cross-party. It's more progressive. So they're doing amazing work all over the country, and I'd like to bring you on now, please. Francis Foley.
Hi, everyone. Oh, God, that's loud. Thanks for choosing to stop here. There's many things you could be listening to and doing and eating and smelling and talking to people about, but thanks for showing up here. I'm Francis. I work at an organization called Compass, and I want to start kind of tentatively with a computer game analogy. Now, I wasn't really allowed to play computer games because my mum thought they were bad for me, but I'm going to go with this anyway. So in 2016, in November 2016 specifically, on one day was a thing that really, really changed the future of what I decided to do. And that was the day that Trump was elected. I'm sure people sort of remember this moment, but actually, I remember it for a much different reason. So on that day, when I woke up at 6 a.m., I was holding a little green shoot of hope. And that green shoot came from the night before in Richmond Park. We had held a pop-up session as Compass with activists all across the borough because we were deciding to support the Lib Dem candidate in that constituency, in that by-election. The event had been amazing. We had packed, within 3 days, we had packed the whole church. It was a kind of Unitarian church. We had people there from every political party and none. And I felt really inspired and really energized. And then, of course, the night of, November the 8th comes around, and it felt like we had automatically just jumped to the big boss level of the computer game, right? And I felt like, well, what we're doing in Richmond Park is piddly, Actually, what is the point? It was really nice. It gave me a lot of good feels, but against what we're facing in Trump, why does any of this matter? The reason I raise this now is I'm sure you're all sitting there thinking of your own particular moment of that, where you were holding to this little green shoot and then you were looking at this massive mountain you had to scale, or this huge big boss where you were like, I don't have the resources for that. And the thing is, Compass decides to continue to exist because it works across and despite that, endless setbacks. We're set back by tribalism, we're set back by constant infighting, we're set back by parties telling us you can't do this or expelling people from parties. And what we exist to do is point to three major things that we think are important for our democracy right now. One is that alliance building that I talked about in Richmond. It's people coming together across parties saying, you know what, there's something bigger than party affiliation, there's something that we're actually all united behind and agree upon. Secondly, it's the idea that these alliances are also built on trust. They're not just for tactical advantage, they're not just to win a seat in a particular council ward or to get your person elected. They represent something bigger, which is a kind of two fingers up really to the system here, which is all about binary opposition and about antagonism. And thirdly, we push for citizen assemblies because we think of citizen assemblies as a space where people can grow their democratic muscle. They're not just asked to show up and be consulted or be heard, they're asked to make decisions. And I think that is one of the most important things that this country needs right now, is people stepping up into their power, understanding that they have agency and building their democratic faith. And by democratic faith, I don't mean faith in this system, I mean faith in one another, in our expertise, in our knowledge, in our innovation, in our power, and that's what Compass exists to do. So I just want to bring all of that together by saying that we have a moment right now. We all know the urgency. Everybody here gathered today understands the urgency, and we understand what we're up against. We understand that big boss level. But I also think that by combining these three different democratic moves, and I think no one is more important than the other. PR is important, alliance building is important, and the citizen assemblies are all important. If they combine, it can be a sort of brick across the table moment. The rubber band gets stretched right back here, and it can spring. Things move faster than we sometimes can believe that they will. And I think combining all of this power and action into one place for us all to be feeling each other's power can be incredibly energizing and actually make real change happen. So I would just say, believe in your own agency to fight the big bosses, whatever they look like, and most importantly, focus on each other, because ultimately democratic faith rests in each of the people you're sitting around in this non-room. Thank you so much to Egalitarian Matter for everything they do, and thank you everybody for what you're going to do this weekend, which is showing up and showing each other's power and confidence. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Francis, and everyone else at Compass, Neil, Lena, everybody, just brilliant, brilliant work. And as Francis says, thanks to all of you for being here and showing up and making the change and being the change. It's absolutely fantastic. There's lots of progress being made towards better democracy. A really big moment last year was after lots of, thank you, collaboration of lots of democracy organisations, a lot of it led by Labour for a New Democracy. We got the Labour Party to make policy for proportional representation. Woo! So let's cheer that. We need one of the two big parties on side if we're going to make this change. The Labour leadership aren't quite there yet, but the membership is solidly there, the unions are there. So let's keep pushing. Come along 24th of May and we can make it happen. So, whilst everyone's working very hard to get real democracy, other people are building the new democracy as we go along. You guys are doing, the citizens' assemblies are doing it. And I'd like to introduce Indra Adnan from The Alternative, who is building The Alternative. So Indra, would you like to come up and say a few words?
Hi everybody, and great to see you here, and rather shy, I have to say, to follow both Zach and Francis, who are almost like politicians themselves, and in the sense that they're really able to make a very succinct argument. And what I want to say, sorry, I hope you take that as a compliment. I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm a mother, and I'm a writer. And I'm somebody who's really, I suppose, spent all their life trying to understand why human beings don't have agency. Why is it that when so many of us want the same thing, which is something healthy and good for our children and a planet that is thriving, where are we in this system? And I was a member of the Green Party, still am. A member of the Labour Party, actually, still am, if that's allowed. I'm a member of the Progressive Alliance. And I was a member of Compass for 5 years, or still am. because I think all of these things really matter. Proportional representation is definitely the big shift in the political system that we're looking for. But I shifted away from all of this work and decided to take a completely different stand on June the 16th, I've got to remind myself here, the 16th of June 2016. Does anybody know what that date is? No. On June the 16th, 2016 was the day that Joe Cox was murdered. It was just about a week before the Brexit referendum, and it really brought home to me how our current political system is designed to fail, designed to divide us. Half the country is really invested in the failure of the other half. How is it that we really allow ourselves to take part in a system that continues to divide us? And how do we think we're going to get any real success from all of our efforts when the person next door becomes our enemy for no good reason and our friend, the next day? So this is really core to the thing that we have to address. So when Zach talks about a new political system and Kleiner introduces the factor of proportional representation, I would say absolutely yes, but I also say it's not enough. We need to build into this system social infrastructure that allows human beings to come together across divides. Now you might ask yourself, what kind of social infrastructure would that be? And how on earth can I build something like that? But I want to let you know that this is a phenomenon that since the birth of the internet has been rapidly growing, not just in the UK, but all over the world. We are actually in the midst of a social revolution, a global one, in which people are using their own energy and their own desire to see something different, to come together with others. The movement of people coming together is the thing ultimately that we know is going to save us. Because how can we win against another? We all need to survive at this time. So where does that fit in this, where does that fit in this system? The way that we see it, the alternative, is that there is a new kind of politics, we call it social politics, that is arising through what we call cosmo-local community agency networks. They take all forms. You'll know them as neighborhood networks, or they might be transition towns, there might be eco-villages, there might be municipalities. You'll know, you've got one of these in your area. Somewhere near you, a community agency network is currently taking shape. And in these community agency networks, CANs for short, we're going to build, or we are already building, the tools and the architecture for a new democracy. People can come together, vote on the things they want to vote on, make decisions, participate in the economy, really build whole new systems in the communities they're living in. And then how do we affect the political structure? Well, it's two things. First of all, we do need a new political party that really stands for the people coming together and their right to do so, and their right to make decisions. That party cannot exist in the UK because there's no proportional system. It can certainly have a try in Scotland, where there is a proportional system, and it can also happen all over the globe where people are coming together in this way. So I just want you to watch out for it, because it'll be an internet phenomenon before it is actually a UK phenomenon, and you can be part of that. If you see it, please think about how you can contribute to it, but mostly it's about how your community comes together, giving space to people who don't have a voice, actively including the people who have always been excluded, and most importantly, finding the joy and the power in that feeling of people coming together, seeing the life in them, bringing us back to life, really, and making that a new politics. So watch out for the alternative global. Please join up, and we'll see you in the new political system. Thank you.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I'm going to do a shout out before bringing on the next speaker. How do I tighten this? Okay, well, hopefully we'll just stay. So I keep talking about the lobby on the 24th of May, the People's Lobby. Where is Andy Berryman? Wave your hand, where are you? He's hiding, he's leafleting somewhere. Andy is the mastermind who's coordinating all of this. And just on the topic of people needing to come together and work together, this is a great big exercise in lots of organizations who are campaigning for democracy, creating something together. I'd say this, the big one, is one of the most spectacular illustrations realizing alliance building. So at Make Votes Matter, we've got an alliance, people pushing for PR, but this is a really exciting coming together of lots of different energies. So it's fantastic. I'm saying some of this because the next person I'm about to introduce, there he is, there's Andy. Woo, well, Andy. You can stay there, yeah. So the next person I'm going to introduce is Poppy, who's both on our team at Make Votes Matter, pushing really hard for PR and doing excellent work. And they're also representative of XR Youth, so really kind of as a person spanning both of the projects. So would you like to come up and say some words?
I'm not that tall. Oh. Right, thank you. Hello, hello, hello. Are we good?
We give a round of applause to Marine too for doing all the
Okay, yeah, so I'm from Make Votes Matter, and I also work a lot with XR Youth, but I'm kind of speaking, I guess, on behalf of me and not on behalf of either. So I think I came into politics the way lots of young people do. You reach 18 and you're suddenly like, yay, I get a voice, right? You know, you go to the polling station, cast your vote, and then realize, oh, the person I voted for didn't win, but it's fine because my vote still mattered, right? Like, it still had a difference, right? And then you realize that it made absolutely no difference and it didn't change the outcome at all, and you kind of may as well not have gone. And I think when a lot of young people reach that point, they don't then, you know, move on to think about how they can change it. They just stop. And that's fair enough. I don't blame them. They have been told all through school and all through by the media and everything that the way to enact change is to vote, and that's the be-all and end-all. And therefore, when they do vote and don't make any difference, they then drop off the political discussion. And I think proportional representation, a good way that I think about it is as the start and not the end. So it's the start of building a society where everyone feels like their voice is actually going to make a change. And therefore, people might under PR vote and still not feel like they've had enough of a change, but that means they'll get involved in political movements and they'll start to think more about it. And I think with a voting system that allows people to feel represented, the chance of them then joining a movement such as XR or such as any movement for change is far, far greater. And I think that's a really good reason for it. I'm an anarchist, so my end goal is quite far from the current one. But I'm still in the movement for PR, and I think some people maybe see that as a bit weird. I'm not sure. But I think so many of the arguments for first past the post are so authoritarian, like even from hardcore socialists sometimes say something along the lines of, we can't have PR because then Labour will never have complete control. And I don't want Labour to have complete control, and I don't want the Greens to have complete control, and I don't want any one political party to have complete control. And I think under PR, yes, my end goal is far more along the line than PR, but it's the first step towards building that society where everyone feels that their voice is actually heard. I'm going to talk briefly about climate because, you know, we're at XR. I think I was at an event when I first started working for Make Votes Matter, which was only a couple of months ago. They held a really amazing event about democracy loves climate justice, and it was all about why PR would be good for solving the climate crisis. And I think the big thing that stuck with me was that our current political climate encourages people to A, infight. There's no reason for Labour and Greens to get along, so why do they? And B, there's no long-term thinking, because every 4 years you just have to worry about being re-elected again. And therefore all that the political parties do is just canvass the areas that they think they might have a vague chance, don't care about the areas that they have a safe seat, and then rinse and repeat every 4 years. And I think under PR, I really hope that would change, and that would encourage that long-term thinking that we really, really need when facing the climate crisis. Just one last point is about eco-fascism. There's a reason this has been brought up in my mind. I think in order to fight eco-fascism, we really need to listen to each other. And our current system is not allowing that. I also just wanted to say that there is an eco-fascist organisation right behind you, if you want to check them out. Please don't tell them that focusing on population is a completely eco-fascist narrative. Feel free to go and shout at them or whatever. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bobby, and thanks also to these translators. Do we call you translators? No. Interpreters, sorry. Really appreciate it, what you're doing, yeah. Okay, so thanks for everything everyone said, and thank you for listening. And now we'd really like to hear from you as well, if you've got comments or questions. If they're for specific people, do say, or maybe this can be much more of a conversation. So any burning comments or questions that people want to make from this side of the microphone? Yes, please.
If 85% of Labour members want proportional representation, how can the leader possibly get away without giving them that?
Thank you. Yes, if the membership of the Labour Party want PR, why can't the membership give them, the leadership give them that? Yes. Yeah, so if the majority of the Labour membership want PR, then how can the leadership get away with not giving them that? Who'd like to take that? I bet a few people have got good answers. I mean, I think part of it's about accountability. Come on.
Yeah. I mean, there's no good answer to that. There is no good answer to that other than, I suppose, okay, let's be more diplomatic about this. Keir Starmer sees it as a threat. He sees it as a threat because he thinks it looks like weakness to work with other parties, and he thinks the Labour Party would lose votes under a PR system. Now, let's deal with the second one first. They would. It would probably be fine. Let's look at the other countries around the world which have proportional representation systems. Let's look to Germany or to New Zealand recently. I mean, let's look to New Zealand because they moved from a first-past-the-post system to a PR system, and they've had, pretty big success in progressive governments. And let's especially look to New Zealand because I think what Jacinda Ardern did last year, 2 years ago, when she formed the government and invited the Greens to be part of it, even though she didn't have to, was one of the most underreported things that happened in 2020. I mean, I know that there was other stuff going on in 2020, fair enough. But it was a really powerful moment because what she was saying is, I want the Greens in government because I need their expertise, I need their legitimacy, and I need their wisdom. And that was amazing. So we're trying to say to Keir Starmer, it's a show of strength if you can work with other parties. In our recent polling at Compass, 76% of progressive voters want parties to work together, so we're also going with the grain, people want that. And finally, you need other parties to deal with these big complex issues. You can't solve the climate crisis by yourself. We're going to need everybody, and we're going to need the biggest boat that we can get and the broadest church and whatever mixed metaphors you want to use. So I think, finally on that point, you need to show Keir Starmer that this is a vote winner for him. Unfortunately, at the moment, because of the system, he is listening to a very small number of voters in a very small number of constituencies. That is bullshit. But the way that you can do that is work with an organisation like Compass to work across party. We're working in seats across the country to target what we call progressive tragedies, which are seats where, despite the higher number of progressive votes, the Tories still won the seat. And our amazing local groups are doing great work at sometimes great personal cost, not least getting kicked out of their own parties, to get the best progressive elected, and also to put pressure on those candidates to A, support PR, and B, support greater and more urgent climate action. So I think all of these things go together as a piece, but in answer to your great question, there is no good reason, there is no good excuse, we just need to make the argument better.
Thank you. And I think another part to that is about while Keir Starmer might be ignoring his own members, we know that they listen to voters. And so that's why we're doing the lobby on the 24th of May. I'm becoming like a broken record on this sometime. But we need to see all the grassroots pressure. So the Labour Party in particular finally says, well, we have to do this. We've got no other choice. Okay. Any other questions, comments? Would you like to? I hope so.
Yeah, thank you. It's about political agency, which you discussed quite a bit, but I'm not clear how this would affect the individual. I'm a member of Compass. I love your fortnightly podcasts. I'm a member of Make Votes Matter, and I'm a member of the Green Party. But my election, all I can vote for is a Labour candidate who's been there for years and has a huge majority. I know about tactical voting, but for most people, they can't actually vote. So it's really what can I do, or what can people in my position do at an election to actually make PR more likely to happen?
Thank you very much for that. I'd like another volunteer to come and respond. Zach.
Thank you very much. And as a Compass member and a Green Party member, I feel like you're our core constituency for Make Votes Matter. So, so the question was, how do you encourage people to find agency in tactical voting? So the first thing I would say is there are tactical voting websites. So during election time, people can look in their constituency. I'm not a huge fan of tactical voting, and I have to find the balance in that on being a Make Votes Matter platform and deputy leader of the Green Party. I should first of all echo exactly what Klein has said. Make Votes Matter are not party political, so I'm speaking very much in my own agency here. I feel like from a Green Party perspective that if people want green action, then they need a Green MP or a Green councillor. Now, I think the exception for that is if the Labour Party were working with us, I think there's now a very, very clear call after 13 years of austerity to say, above everything else, we need the Tories out. And if you can't get applause for that, what can you get applause for? But quite seriously, people are really feeling it. I'm feeling 13 years of a Tory, and I'm in the privileged position of being an elected politician. I could walk to some of the social housing estates in London or places up north and go talk to them about the experiences of the Tories. And they don't have the luxury of talking about environmental movement necessarily, although it's very clear that there's no environmental justice without social, racial, and economic justice too. All of these things are interconnected. So to come back to your question, because I've wavered off it. I'm very clear that I want to see more Green councillors and more Green MPs. I'm also very clear that I'm very willing to talk to the Labour Party. And if Keir Starmer wanted to come forward and say, I back proportional representation, let's have a conversation about which seats can we talk about not standing in or doing non-aggression pacts, that's a conversation I and the leadership would be very willing to have. Thank you. Sorry to finish with a problem, but the problem we have right now is Keir Starmer won't even talk to us. So it's not that we're in a meeting with the Labour leadership and they're driving a hard bargain. They won't even sit down at that table with us. So I guess the end of my question is, if anyone is a Labour member here, this is not an attack. This is a plea to keep talking to your local parties, keep lobbying Keir Starmer. We do not have the luxury to not be talking or to be looking for a Labour talk about having an outright majority. They should be talking in practical terms about getting the Tories out, getting a real democracy, and making sure we make votes matter. Thanks for your question.
I'm just going to add really one quick thing, because this is just so core. Compass's campaign called Win as One has two clear aims. And it's exactly to your point. One, to get the highest number of progressives elected, the best placed progressive elected in all these seats, to get a progressive majority government. But the second is more important, which is we're giving our maximum support to candidates who support systems change. Because we're not just there to kind of replicate this. We don't just keep doing this cycle after cycle, asking people to hold their nose and go to the ballot box. We're really only supporting candidates who support PR, and we're putting a lot of pressure on those candidates, which in election time I think will be important leverage for them to get elected. So we're trying to build our base in that respect. And without that support, we're saying we're not here to do it again and again for all the reasons Zach said. So I think that systems change point is really, really crucial to the whole piece of it. But thanks for your question.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Yes, Barbara.
Okay, thank you. I think one of the main things that we can all do is talk about what proportional representation really means. And I remember being on an alliance meeting, a Make Votes Matter alliance meeting, where Molly Scott Cato, who was then our Green MEP, was saying that only 1% of the country, of the voters, understand what PR means. You know, and I think that's part of, and I'm going to be probably hammered here a bit, but I think that's partly why Keir Starmer isn't going for it, because he fears he'll lose votes, because people just don't know what it means, and they'll just vote for what's normal, what's usual, and so on. So that's one point I wanted to make. And I'm also a member of the Green Party, Make Votes Matter, and so on. And one thing that we've done down in Devon is to form a very strong Make Votes Matter group. And we actually make a point, we've got one member in particular, who goes to schools and asks to talk to the sixth formers. We have no political education in this country, hardly at all, unless you go to a public school. And there are one or two comprehensive schools where they do have politics or citizens, whatever they call it, for GCSE and A levels. But there are very, very few that are not private schools or public schools that do that. And we really need to change the educational system as well. And I live in a constituency that's been conservative forever, really. And one of the things that we're doing as a prelude to the next election is we're actually going to have pre-election primaries between the Greens, the Lib Dems and Labour and anyone else who wants to stand, so that we can attempt to make voters choose between one of those progressive parties and all vote together for that one. And in my constituency, we're encouraging people, because we really want proportional representation, to vote for the Lib Dem, because we're so conservative there that the Greens and Labour won't stand a chance. But the other thing that we're doing is really pressing our Lib Dem candidate, and we have a very good candidate, to press her to make sure that the Lib Dems really go for PR as soon as they get in power, that our MP gets in power, to back that and not do what they did in the last time when Nick Clegg was there. So that's our strategy around where we're living, and thank you to Make Votes Matter and all the other.
Thank you very much, Barbara. I really appreciate that. And Barbara and everyone in the MVM Totnes group is doing amazing work. So yeah, absolutely epic. Rain, I'd like you to ask a question.
Hey. Well, I am obviously going to ask a question about citizens' assemblies. So, well, obviously I'm in the Citizens' Assembly working group. Sorry, is that better? Yeah. So I'm all for citizens' assemblies, but... Oh, sorry. But my question is really, so I'm originally from the Netherlands. I'm a Dutch national. We have proportional representation, and it's still a shit show. So I would really love to hear from you what your thoughts are about citizens' assemblies and how that can work with proportional representation, please. Yeah.
Hi there, and by the way, I'm Dutch as well. Born in Holland. Yeah, so in answer to your question, I think the principle of a citizens' assembly is absolutely core to the future, because what it represents is that human beings begin to take part in making decisions, and they begin to have some sort of agency, and that is understood as a principle for our society. The second part about citizens' assembly that is so core, that isn't really represented so much in voting, is the chance to deliberate. So as many of you probably know, it's quite possible to go into a citizens' assembly with one view and come out with another. And that is the importance, in a way, of calling out our current political system, which just asks you to vote really to the left or to the right. It gives you such crude set of choices, really. And that pays no respect or understanding to ourselves as people who are capable of making decisions about our futures. So citizen assemblies are core. However, I would say for me, what I'm trying to do, as well as that, right? Because a citizens' assembly will only really cream off, in a way, a small group of people to represent the rest of society. And what we need within our society more broadly is the architecture for everyone to have the chance to deliberate, make their feelings felt, and have some form of making a decision about what happens to them directly. Now, I'm not particularly a fan of liquid democracy, for example, which just invites people to, tick one way or another on a virtual platform. For me, the important part is treat us and think of us as human beings with minds that are currently, facing the crisis, needing space and time to reflect, come back to ourselves, connect with each other, make relationship. There's a lot for us to do as human beings, trying to reclaim our society and reclaim our lives and reclaim our planet. Citizens' assemblies are the first step, but all the other kinds of forms of participation and decision-making and growing yourself into being capable of the future we're facing, all of these things have to add up. So I really, encourage you to be part of what we're doing, which is building an entire structure really for the people to come together and think through and make decisions. This should be possible, right?
I'm just going to give a very little answer and tell you a quick story. So I'm elected in London to the London Assembly, one of a few places in the UK other than Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland that uses proportional representation. And so I experience on a daily basis the power of having to work with colleagues from other parties, where we sit in a room, we literally have to compromise, talk and come up with what is the best for our constituents. That's a sensible way of doing democracy, as opposed to, it broke my heart listening to Poppy's story, talking about 18-year-olds or young people not even thinking their vote is worth anything when we need politicians to work together. Now, I work closely with London Mayor Sadiq Khan, and this story is not intended to bash him, so first of all, I'll say some quick, nice things about him. On the climate crisis, I work constructively with him, so I don't oppose him for opposition's sake. When he does the right thing, I applaud him. When he gets the urgency and the scale, I applaud him. There are areas where he gets it wrong, such as the Silvertown Road Tunnel. If you don't know what that is, come talk to me afterwards and I'll tell you about the Silvertown Road Tunnel. Anyway, my very first Mayor's Question Time, where I was able to ask him a question, I asked him a question about citizens' assemblies. I said, I've just been elected, but I'd like to bring the voices of Londoners, or the people who have voted for me, into this chamber. His answer, and I don't mean this to bash him because I think it's most politicians' answer, was that I needed to watch out that I didn't make myself redundant as a politician. And I think that's this real top-down attitude towards politics. This was in a public meeting, that rather than listening to grassroots democracy and having more people's voices and more people's wisdom, if we just have more power, we'll be able to control. So I think where citizens' assemblies and proportional representation meets is we need to make sure we have proportional representation so we can get people elected who know that they have to represent the views of their constituents, that we don't have safe seats, that if you don't like what they're doing, we can kick them out. You should be able to kick any of us out that you don't agree with us after a period of time. That's what elections are for. And then have citizens' assemblies for those complicated ideas that need complex questions. And we need more nuance in our politics. And I think citizens' assemblies would be a great tool to get there. Again, not the end goal, but would be a start of a better politics. Thanks for the question.
Okay, just to complete the we need all of it question, but it's a great question. I took a year off Compass to spend a year working on a project to design a constitutional convention for the UK, which is essentially a huge citizen assembly which would look at democratic reform from lots of different angles. And the reason I did that was because I do think you're right. That one change won't itself solve all of the issues. But what I will say is, what is quite specific about Britain, it's like know thyself or know the context you're operating in. In Britain, we sort of have a problem in that we have too stable a system. We've had a very stable democracy for a very long time. Lots of people argue we had our revolution too early, 200 years too early. Everyone else was like, what are you doing? 200 years later, they had their revolution. And we were like, oh, we brought the king back, and we still have one. Anyway, that's a totally different issue. The point about this is the British system is extremely strongly embedded. It has really, really deep roots. And I think one of the biggest problems in this country in terms of our political system is people not wanting change, but people really not thinking it can happen. The system just grinds on and on. It goes through crisis after crisis. People make incremental changes, and yet the establishment and broadly speaking, a very small political elite run this country. despite amazing social movements and despite political movements which have, we're standing on the shoulders of giants, some of whom, like the suffragettes, who are like all finally got a statue for them guys, right down here. But these things take years. So my point of mentioning all of this is just because I think one change leads to another. I think bringing in PR right now to this system would actually be a massive shake-up. And I think that what that would also do was open up some space, cracks that let the light in. It would open up some space for citizens' assemblies. It would open up some space for innovation in our democracy. When was the last time we saw some innovation in our damn democracy? We've been doing the same thing in the same place with the same people for hundreds of years. I think people really need to see that something can change. And in a way, I don't really care what that thing is. I'll take House of Lords reform. I'll take PR. I'll take increased use of citizens' assemblies. But the final point to end on here is, unfortunately, through all my work on citizens' assemblies, the sad thing is, you see this amazing microcosm of what could happen in the room. And I was a facilitator up at a climate change citizens' assembly up in Camden. And the woman was sitting in the room and she was like, I've never really been involved in politics before. I'm not really sure why I'm here. I'm not really sure I have much to offer. At the end of the whole week, she was like, yeah, I think I have something to offer. I really understood here what I bring. I have expertise, I have experience. It was really amazing to see. And then she's saying, I'm handing over these decisions to a council, but I just heard today that my councillor can't do anything about this. They can't do anything about this. It's all over their head. And I was saying, well, yeah, because we live in one of the most centralised systems of government in the world. So my point being is citizens' assemblies are a political education for people. Somebody who mentioned political education earlier, thank you so much for that. They are themselves a political education to show the other changes that are needed, but we just need some way of breaking into this system which is not working. And I think we should try all of the ways at once, because all of them are mutually compatible and mutually complementary. So keep going with everything you're doing, basically.
Thank you so much, Francis. That's fantastic. Right, we're coming close to the end of our time. Does anyone have any burning questions or comments that they want to ask or share before we have final comments from our lovely speakers? Okay, that was like pretty epic end speech stuff, so it feels like a good note to end on. So would any of you like to say a final few words? You all good? Okay, all right. So I've got a couple of final words. And this bit's really easy because it's written on this piece of paper. Do you agree politics isn't working? Yes. Do you believe that all votes should count equally? Yes. Yes. Okay, in that case, join us in London and ask your MP for a meeting. Sorry? 24th of May, exactly, she's got it. Okay, we've got leaflets. Come and talk to us if you'd like to know more. Come and talk to us in general if you'd like to talk to us. Do keep up on your brilliant activism for the environment, for democracy. Thank you all so much for everything you're doing. Lots of love. Thank you.